If you're somebody that's thinking about moving down south, you probably already have looked at places such as Georgia, South Carolina, and Florida. And so I decided to go on a road trip to compare South Carolina, Georgia to Florida, but I can't go to every single city. So I decided to really focus on the more sought after places in each one of the states. For South Carolina, I picked Charleston, and for Georgia, I picked Savannah, and I live in Sarasota. I'm going to start off with Charleston. Charleston is one of the most beautiful American cities that I've ever seen, and just a little bit of history. So Charleston was founded in 1670, which actually makes it one of the oldest American cities there is, and over time it also became one of the wealthiest ports. Charleston also played a major role in American history, including the Civil War, with the first shots fired at Fort Sumter in Charleston Harbor in 1861. We actually decided to stay in the downtown historic part of Charleston in the French Quarter neighborhood. As soon as we stepped out to downtown Charleston and we walked down the cobblestone streets, it really felt like you took a time machine back to the 18th century. As a matter of fact, a lot of the homes and the buildings date back to the 18th and 19th century, but they're immaculate. The streets and the homes are just so well taken care of and so well preserved. And that's what makes Charleston really elegant versus a lot of the other American cities. Now, conveniently, we stayed really close to the Charleston Market, and that actually worked in our favor because in the mornings we would walk over there, walk through the Charleston City Market, and it's just so much more than just a souvenir market. It's actually one of the oldest public markets in the United States, and it stretches through about 4 city blocks. And one of the evenings we decided to go to a famous hotel to have dinner at the Mills House. It's a pink hotel, and to get to it we ended up taking the taxi bike. Now at the Mills House we met some incredible people. As a matter of fact, we sat next to this couple that ended up living in the suburbs, and as they explained, they would come in every now and then, maybe every other weekend, to have some dinner in downtown Charleston or see a show. And that's just an example of how people really need to understand what the heart and soul of a place is, because they may not take advantage of it often, but it is the atmosphere, the history, and what people pride themselves in that they're purchasing into, even if they end up moving further away from it. Now, of course, we ended up going to the waterfront park as well, and the Battery. The Battery has these grand mansions directly on the harbor with cannons out front, and you walk along the seawall and look out at Fort Sumter in the distance, and that is an absolutely spectacular view, and it's also a historic part of downtown Charleston. Now, of course, we've been wondering about the beaches, and I'm sure a lot of you are as well, especially if you're trying to escape the cold weather up north. So we ended up going to 2 beaches, Sullivan's Island and the Isle of Palms. As soon as we got closer to the beaches, I realized how different the water looks and feels on the Atlantic side. I should have known. I'm from New York, so I'm used to the Atlantic Ocean, but I've been in Sarasota for a long time. I've come to think of the water as very clear and calm. That's really not the case over on the Atlantic side. The water is much darker. It seems a little bit colder as well, and there's obviously more waves, but it also really feels different if you're trying to be somewhere where the water is much more like pool water. It's not going to happen on the Atlantic side. So if the beach is important to you and you're looking for kind of like the Caribbean beaches, then that's going to take you to Sarasota. After the beach, we ended up going to Shem Creek Boardwalk, which was highly suggested by a few people. And there you can find a great collection of waterfront seafood restaurants built on the creek with shrimp boats docked right outside. It really is a special atmosphere. And one of the things that catches people off guard a lot of times, especially when they're coming from places such as Sarasota on the Gulf, is that the water views in this part of the country are just very different. And I'm not talking about the beach view as much as, say, the bay view. What you see in the Charleston area, also in Savannah, is a lot of salt marshes, miles and miles of tall grass woven through tidal water. And some people connect with that type of low country look very deeply. For me, it looked nice, but I really was missing the open water views and the sparkling blue Gulf water you get in the Sarasota area. Now let's talk about the weather, and that's going to be important to a lot of you. The temperature can actually be different by about 15 to 20 degrees, especially in the wintertime versus Sarasota. So in the winter, it can make a difference. If you're somebody that's been dreaming about Caribbean type of weather, Sarasota is it, not so much Charleston. Now, in summary, as relates to Charleston, this is my impression here. I feel like Charleston is an incredibly beautiful place. I'm really talking about downtown Charleston and also some of the suburbs that we drove through. It is very clean, very well maintained. Everything seems very polished, lots of history there. For some people, that's exactly what they're looking for, and that is great. For me, after a few days, it just seemed like it was a little bit too perfect, but you have to come and check out Charleston for yourself because a lot of you are going to fall in love with it. So we ended up driving about 2 hours to Savannah, and if Charleston felt like a perfectly restored painting, Savannah felt like a novel. One of the first things you're going to notice about Savannah, especially downtown Savannah where we stayed in, is the age of the city. It's not as old as Charleston. Savannah was formed in 1733, but just walking through some of the streets in Savannah, you can see that the history here stretches for miles and miles. You feel it in the uneven streets near River Street, which is actually where we stayed in, or the old brick buildings along the waterfront, the iron balconies, the narrow lanes, and the centuries-old churches that still stand in the middle of everyday life. And then, of course, there are the trees, and you've probably heard about this a lot. It truly is something out of a beautiful picture album. The live oaks draped in Spanish moss create these canopies over the streets and the squares that are just breathtaking. Some of those oaks have been there for generations, and they give the city this calm, almost cinematic atmosphere that feels completely different from newer Sunbelt communities built in the last few decades. Savannah is built around 22 historic squares, and each square has its own personality, history, and atmosphere. And I think that's what made Savannah feel more livable to me day to day. The green space is constantly woven into the city. Every few blocks you run into another square, another canopy of trees, another place to sit down. I actually feel like there were way more places to sit down and to really just relax and take in the scene in Savannah versus in Charleston. It's just one of my observations. And then the history is not hidden away in museum. It's everywhere, just as much as it is in Charleston. Savannah survived much of the Civil War intact, which is one of the reasons much original architecture still exists today here. You walk past homes and buildings that are literally hundreds of years old, and there's a weight and texture to the city that's difficult to recreate artificially. One place that really captured this feeling for me was the old Pink House. And if you're in Savannah and you're looking to have great dinner, that is a place to go to. It's a restaurant inside an 18th century mansion. And we walked all over downtown Savannah, got to know all the different streets, but we also ended up taking a narrated trolley tour, paid for it, but it was excellent. Our driver knew a lot about the history. It's just one of those ways of learning about an area while not just looking at a pretty building, but you're really understanding the history. Hands down, Forsyth Park is the centerpiece of the city, and it's absolutely magnificent, especially in the late afternoon. There's the famous fountain, the oak canopy, people walking their dogs, picnicking. It's one of those places that you can imagine living really close to. And something that defines Savannah that you don't feel as strongly in Charleston is the creative energy. The Savannah College of Art and Design, also known as SCAD, has its campus woven throughout the entire downtown area. And it really genuinely has shaped the character of Savannah. There's a lot of street art, galleries, interesting boutiques, a grunge, an art scene that gives the city texture. And the city isn't trying to be perfect. Downtown Charleston felt consistently groomed everywhere I walked. Savannah has beautiful areas. There's absolutely no doubt about it. Truly stunning areas. And then right next to them, you might walk into a block that feels much rougher. So the city is more uneven in that way. For some people, that may look like authenticity. To me, I really like that. For others, that may be a consideration. Now, the beaches. Of course, I went to the beach here. We ended up taking a day trip to Tybee Island, the beach that's closest to Savannah, about 18 miles away. Laid back, lots of character. But of all the three cities, Savannah had my least favorite beach experience. And it started off with driving out towards the coast. You pass miles and miles and miles of salt marshes and tidal grass. And the beach itself just didn't have the same wow factor for me as Sarasota. Okay, so now I'm actually going to take you to where I live in, which is Sarasota, Florida. It sits on the Gulf Coast, about 60 miles south of Tampa. And here's something important to note. Sarasota is not a historic southern city. It's so far from it. We have so much new construction happening right now. It doesn't have the architecture of Charleston or the Spanish moss-draped squares of Savannah. But what this place does offer is something completely different. So if you've always been dreaming about living in a place that seems like the Caribbean, but you don't have to live in the Caribbean, Sarasota is going to deliver that. Talking about beaches here in Sarasota, we have famous ones, Siesta Key being one of the most famous in Sarasota, and often it's named the #1 beach in Florida or the #1 beach in the United States or one of the top beaches in the world. And if you're somebody that's looking for new construction, you're going to be well off here in Sarasota because we have plenty of that, whether it's in downtown Sarasota if you're looking for a condo or maybe new construction homes. Most of them you're going to find east of Highway 75 in Lakewood Ranch. We also have more mature communities as well, so not all of Sarasota is going to be brand new. We have a lot of culture here, a lot of arts and theater places to go to. As a matter of fact, Sarasota is known as the cultural hub on the Gulf Coast. There is a trade-off to living in Sarasota. Not everything is rosy here. We don't have the historical architecture. And also with all these people who've moved here, especially since COVID, the pandemic, traffic and growth has been real. A lot of new construction happening everywhere, it seems. And for some, it is great. They may appreciate it, especially when the new construction also brings retail and downtown areas. But for others, it's a change, and it's also a very fast-paced change. And then, of course, there's hurricanes. I don't have to spend too much time talking about that. We just had one about a year and a half ago. Now we're going to come back down to earth, and we have to talk about money. What does it actually cost to live in a particular place? Look at the median price from Redfin, March 2026, for all 3 cities. So for Sarasota County, the median price for single-family homes came in at $447,000. For condos, it was $400,000. And so let's compare it to Savannah, which is in Chatham County, Georgia. It comes in lower at $346,000 for single-family homes and $316,000 for condos. So from all 3 places that we're speaking about in this video, Savannah, Georgia is going to be the most affordable place from a home purchase price. And then there's Charleston, which is in Charleston County. It's going to be the most expensive of the 3 when it comes to home prices. Median single-family home price came in at $736,000. Quite a difference there. Median condos at $429,000. But to truly do a cost of living comparison, it's so important to not just look at the home expense, the home prices. You have to look at the full picture by getting also tax information, insurance information, HOA information, CDD fees, state income tax, yes or no, what are the savings there if there's no state income tax involved. And so ultimately, the budget has to work, but also it's just as important for you to get the lifestyle correct. And as for me, I have to say that this trip was very confirming in the sense that I live in the right place. Now, if you already know that you're going to be interested in Sarasota and you have some questions or you want support as you're looking for your new home, I would be really happy to assist you. I will also make right now available a free cost of living spreadsheet. You can just download it. I'm going to make sure that the link is in the description section of this video. Drop your comment. Tell me which city is actually calling your name. I'm genuinely curious. And thank you so much for watching today. I always appreciate when you guys do. Have a great day.